What is up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. So this is the next review for Pink Floyd's discography, and first of all I extremely apologise that I didn't do this entire discography a few years earlier because I decided to dedicate this discography to Storm Thorgerson, who recently passed 6 years ago, and that I didn't complete the discography in a very earlier amount of time. But I'm very glad to almost finish off this discography by reviewing two more albums. And with that being said, I'm going to be reviewing the band's 14th studio album entitled The Division Bell. The Division Bell came out in 1994. This is their first album in 7 years after the release of their previous record, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. And this is the only Floyd album that was released in the 90s. And once again, this is Floyd's second album to be released with the trio lineup after Roger Waters' departure. Now, The Division Bell was one of the first albums that I've ever listened to before I got to know the band, and the album cover was one of the first album covers that I've ever discovered when I wanted to get into music. I absolutely adore it. Storm Thorgerson had the idea of sculptured large heads placed next to each other as if they're talking to each other, and John Robertson was the man who created the two sculptured heads. It was located in a field in Ely, and Ely Cathedral is visible on the cover. So this album is 66 minutes, and recently the album celebrated its 25th anniversary, and I'm very glad to review this album. So I think The Division Bell as an album is easily a bigger step up than Momentary Lapse of Reason, which was a really enjoyable listening album, but I think The Division Bell is where most Floyd fans would say that it's like a return to basics, production-wise and also musically. A lot of the lyrics on this album deal with one theme, which is on communication, and the lyrics were written, a lot of it done by David Gilmour and his wife Polly Samson. Other musicians have been contributing to work with Floyd for this time, including bass guitar player Guy Pratt and Dick Parry, who also did saxophone work with Floyd before on Dark Side of the Moon's Time and Us and Them, and also Wish You Were Here's Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And I think Dick Parry is a fantastic saxophone player. Musically, this is where I think it has been a big improvement in terms of just the overall sound and the continuation of Floyd going through some exploring of finding sound that they wanted after Roger's departure. It opens up with Cluster 1, which is an instrumental. Begins very gently and smoothly with ambient sounds, piano chords and notes, including some guitar work that is really nice. What Do You Want From Me is heavily blues inspired, and Gilmour had a fascination of blues, and I think it really shows on this track. And what's even more common, it's a lot more guitar driven and keyboard driven than a few of their previous records. Poles Apart is another one of my favorites. It's very underrated. Gilmour wrote it in the Dadgad guitar tuning. The first verse based on Syd Barrett, and a lot of people would say that the second verse is a reference to Roger Waters, which Gilmour surprisingly denies that, but I think that it is after what Roger did with the band. Another amazing song on this album is Marooned, which is just completely gorgeous instrumental with improvised guitar work, and the pacing of it is steady and it has quite a lot of feel. It's got emotion to it. At least one of my top 10 instrumentals of all time. Another favourite of mine is Wearing the Inside Out. Richard Wright does lead vocals on this one as well, and lyrically it was written by Anthony Moore, and this was Richard's last vocal performance. This was his first since he did vocals on Time from Dark Side of the Moon, and I think he has a really low but soothing tone of his voice. I think it's another underrated masterpiece. Take It Back is more on an uplifting piece. I do love the sound of the chorus with Gilmour's vocals and the female backing vocals joined in together. It is another really good, wonderful song. Some of the lead that Gilmour had done on this record are just fantastic. Keep Talking features audio samples of Stephen Hawking that Gilmour took after seeing a BT commercial that it moved Gilmour to tears. So he used those voice samples of Stephen Hawking and used it on this track. I find some of the lyrics on this one and the next track, Lost for Words, to be like a little bit cheesy, but musically Keep Talking I really did like. Lost for Words is another one that reference to the estrangement on Roger Waters, but the epic, the closing track, High Hopes, I think it's one of their strongest closing tracks since Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Pigs on the Wing, Eclipse. I mean, High Hopes is just a cinematic classic track based on Gilmour's time living in Cambridge, and it suits with the instrumentation that's striking. The Division Bells production is even more improved, although a little negative that I have with it is that I find it to be a little bit overproduced because there was a lot going on. But other than that, the Division Bell I think is still one of the strongest Floyd albums in their entire discography. So I'm going to give this album a 9.5 out of 10. Definitely their best album in a long time, in my opinion. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.